Welcome into a new BuffStampede Radio. Adam Munsterteiger, the publisher of BuffStampede.com on the 24/7 Sports Network here. And today we have a three-part podcast coming your way, beginning with a conversation with Colorado commit Talan Chandler, then an interview with Kevin Borba from Athlon Sports, followed by a chat with BuffStampede.com contributor Jimmie Searfoss, who's actually going to get the keys and run the show for me on BuffStampede.com for 5 days while I'm away with my family on vacation. Going to need this little break with Pac-12 Media Day and preseason camp coming around the corner, but let's dive into this podcast. Joined by 2024 Colorado commit Talan Chandler from Nevada, Missouri. Talan has been on Colorado's commit list since early February, and he's been a proud Buff since then. Talan, thanks for joining me. Was your official visit last weekend your fourth trip out to Colorado?
Yes, sir. I think it was.
Did you learn anything new about CU on your official visit?
Um, you know, I learned a little bit more about the players because I got to spend some more time with the players and just learn more about why certain guys chose to come to Colorado, and it's just more about the coaches. It was just a lot of spending time with my second family this weekend, really was what it was.
Did it feel like each time you visited Colorado it was a little bit more settled just in terms of the staff's continuity, and then also now the fact that they've got the bulk of their own guys in there?
Yeah, definitely. So just every single time I've come out, you can just see how much it's changed over time from when I visited out in January to now. So
You put on the recruiter hat once you committed to Colorado. Was that a pretty natural fit? Have you always been kind of an outgoing guy that feels comfortable trying to get other guys on board with Colorado?
yeah, that's something that I've kind of always wanted to be able to do is get other top guys to come play with me because you want to have the best possible team you can have. And just talking to Coach Prime and hearing about the guys that they want in their system and the guys they want on their team. And I was like, okay, I want to have the best guys around me, the guys who have that championship mindset, and so I was like, okay, it's time to put the hat on and get to work.
Three new commits: Brandon Davis Swain, Zycarl Lewis, and Micah Welch, all committed last weekend while you were on campus. And then composite five-star cornerback prospect Charles Lester III seems pretty intrigued with the Buffs now. He's been kind of a Florida State lean for a long time, but it sounds like now all of a sudden Colorado is really in the mix. With those first three guys that did end up committing, was there a time during the weekend when you started to kind of notice it trending towards a commitment with those guys?
So the first day that I got there, they were all still kind of just trying to feel it out. So we got there, me and my family got there on Thursday night, and then that Friday morning is when we all got together. And you could tell that they were just kind of trying to feel it out, see how things work. Because some of them, I think it was their first ever visit, and then like Brandon, it was his third or fourth. So they were still just kind of trying to figure out, like, okay, this place. But then, like with Brandon, as the day started to go on, me and him actually spent most of Friday together and just me working him and talking to him. And as the day went on, I was like, okay, I think this is going to be a good weekend for us. And then a lot of the guys like Micah, we spent a good amount of time with him and his family. And it's just the guys, their mindsets slowly changed as the weekend went on by talking to the coaches, seeing the facilities, and same things that I experienced on my first couple of visits. It's just an unbelievable place out there with the coaches and everything. And so just as they slowly talked to the coaches and talked to the players and saw everything, you could just see in their mind how I was like, okay, this is where I want to be. So, and it helps that Coach Prime got his hands on them. So
Yeah, he's obviously the most famous coach that's out there. What is it like being around Coach Prime as a recruit? Is he laid back, or does he have kind of a sales pitch for you?
yes, and no. He kind of has the sales pitch that any coach would give about the place and why you should be there. But it's really just him as a person that sells you. He's super charismatic. He's truthful with you. He's honest with you. I mean, he'll say, like, if he hasn't watched your film, he'll tell you, I haven't seen your film, man. I've just heard of it from the coaches and stuff. But if he's seen your film, he'll tell you what he likes, what he doesn't like. Like, he's just very honest, very truthful. And it's just the way his vision that he pitches to you, not even necessarily about the school, just about how he wants to change you from a boy to a man. It's not just about football.
Did you have a player host on your official visit out to Colorado?
I did Hank Zelinskis.
Okay. What did you find out about CU by hanging out with him? Obviously, he's new up there, but did you get a feel for what it's like for somebody coming in there that's only been there for a few weeks?
Yeah, so he told me just a little bit about the kind of summer stuff, and he kind of just gave me more details about the transition from high school to college and just a little bit about that. So just kind of tell me how the speed's a little different, and just there's a lot the in high school you're the guy, but here everybody's the guy, just kind of stuff like that, and just getting my head ready for when I come out there in January and stuff. And so it was just kind of good to pick his brain about some things.
Both based on your experience getting recruited by him, but also getting a chance to watch a spring practice. I'm curious how you would describe your future position coach, Bill O'Boyle.
Coach O'Boyle is very old school, but I love it because he's a very genuine guy. I mean, he'll love you like you're his own son, and he cares for you. But he's going to coach you hard, and if you make a mistake, he's going to let you know about it. But it's good because one thing he told me on the official visit is he's going to give me every opportunity to make it to the next level. He's going to help you get to that point because that's what his job is.
You've played guard and tackle at the high school level, but you've told me in the past that Colorado sees you as a center. Are they recruiting you exclusively for that position? How have they kind of talked about that?
So they've pretty much told me that I'm coming in to play center. They said that if I maybe grow an inch or two, I could maybe slide out to guard. But they really like with my football IQ and my polling ability and my technique and stuff, they'd like to have me at center to be able to kind of be that guy on the offensive line. Like we watched some film whenever on my official visit with Coach O'Boyle, and he kind of showed me what their plan for me was and how they run their offense and stuff. And so that's really what they're trying to set me up for, is to be a center in their offense.
And you're moving a lot, you're pulling a lot in your current high school offense. You mentioned that you've seen some film with Coach O'Boyle. What do you think it takes to excel as a center in Sean Lewis's system? Have they gotten into the nuts and bolts as far as that goes?
Really, you just have to not think. You just have to be able to identify the defense, call it out, and be ready to go on a fly. You can't be thinking. You've just got to go with your gut. If you see something, you got to say it, and just really just rely on your technique, and you're gonna work. It's not super sophisticated, but it's definitely tough to go against, and it's a good offense to run for the guys. It's fun. It's fun to do because you have tons of different things you can do on each play. So.
Going back to Coach Prime, when Colorado started recruiting you, did you hear stories from your father about Coach Prime as a player, or did you look up clips online? How did you kind of start that research about exactly the type of player he was back in his playing days?
Well, I'm a big football junkie, so I'd known about Coach Prime for since I've been a little kid. I love watching college football, NFL, all of it. So I've known about him for a while and knew how great of a player he was and everything. And I'd heard some of the stuff. I kind of followed him when he was at Jackson State and stuff, just because of recruiting things. And a couple of my buddies had gotten offered by him, so I knew a good amount about him. But going out there and actually getting to meet him and talk to him was a big deal sealer.
This is maybe the most important question I'm going to ask you, since you're an offensive lineman. You've been out to Boulder 4 times now. Do you have a favorite restaurant near campus yet?
Probably Rio.
Okay. Rio. Yeah. What do you order when you go there?
The fajitas, steak fajitas.
Their grass-fed beef is pretty next level good. That's a good choice there. I definitely recommend it to anybody out there that hasn't been to the Rio and got their fajitas. What does the rest of the summer look like for you? You mentioned before we hit record that you guys are in conditioning. When does everything ramp up for you?
So this upcoming week, we're going to get our pads and everything. And then next Monday, we'll start in pads going over our just contact days and stuff and getting things rolling. Then we have a little break the week of the 4th of July. And then whenever we get back after that week, we're going basically team camp the entire month, full pads, practice every day in the morning. We start at 6 a.m. So we'll go from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for practice. Then we'll go lift after. So
any goals for this upcoming senior season?
I want this team to have the best opportunity that we can. And I think we have a chance to win a state title. So
awesome. Talan, I really appreciate you for coming on, recapping your visit out to Boulder, Colorado. I think you've already established yourself as a fan favorite just from the pride that you've shown as a commit to Colorado. And I know folks have enjoyed getting a chance to know you a little bit since you committed.
Thank you.
Today's episode of Buff Stampede Radio is brought to us by Macaulay Capital, Fractional CFO Services. If you're running a successful small to medium-sized business, You have an impressive set of skills, but as your company grows, you face new and different challenges. When you eclipse $3 million in revenue, you likely have a whole new set of financial challenges. Are you looking for financial guidance and support, but don't have the resources to hire a full-time CFO? Well, we have a solution for you. Hire a fractional CFO from Macaulay Capital. A fractional CFO can work with businesses on a part-time basis, providing the same expertise as a full-time CFO at a fraction of the cost. You get the benefit of having a seasoned financial expert on your team without the commitment or expense of a full-time hire. They love to help your business thrive by improving its profitability and eliminating your financial headaches. Get a long-term partner you can trust to help craft your financial strategy, understand the profitability of each client, help manage your cash smartly so you can take advantage of rising interest rates, and more. It's likely that a partnership with Macaulay Capital will be a win-win situation, meaning that your business will make more money from the guidance of a fractional CFO than the total cost of partnering with Macaulay Capital. For more information or to set up a meeting, visit MacaulayCapital.com or email CFO@MacaulayCapital.com. That's MCCAULEY Capital.com. Joined on the show by Kevin Borba. Kevin works for Athlon Sports. Previously spent time as a production assistant for the Pac-12 Network and has covered Texas and Stanford. Now covering the Buffs. Kevin, how is early summer treating you?
Early summer's treating me good. I'm out here in California. We're kind of getting that hot weather. It's getting a little toasty, but excited to follow all this madness that's going on in Boulder.
Yeah, it was nice getting a chance to meet you when you came out to Boulder to cover the spring game in April. Was that your first time out in Colorado?
That was my very first time in Colorado. Was struggling to get out of the Denver airport. Very complicated airport. I'd never been. It took me a hot minute to figure out how to get out. But Boulder itself was amazing. The whole town is like really tight-knit community, built around the university, obviously, and the program itself. I could tell there's a lot of buzz around it. You would have thought that. I think if you dropped me down from another planet, I thought I was attending like a national championship team spring game.
Did you get a chance to go around town a little bit? What was kind of your itinerary when you were out for the first time?
Okay, so I stayed at, I forget what the hotel was called. I was like half a mile away from the university, so I was just walking everywhere. So I was just exploring. I like to do some hiking, so I was just walking, exploring the campus, exploring the outdoors in the little vicinity that I was in. Had some really good food, some really good just overall interactions with fans. My Uber driver at one point was talking about how he had one of the top barbecue places in Colorado pre-pandemic and how Coach Prime is like really rejuvenated the community, which was really cool to see.
That's awesome. What was it like, the decision process of deciding you were going to, add Colorado coverage to your plate?
I saw a need, obviously after Coach Prime, Deion Sanders took the job. Like you said, I cover Stanford as well over at Fan Nation, and they had no Colorado coverage. And so I was like, I'll jump on it. I think that's a great opportunity to kind of cover a very interesting, a very up and coming program. And so I ended up, they sent me over to Athlon because Athlon wanted some Colorado coverage. And so that's kind of how it all started. There wasn't Colorado coverage to the extent of someone following them every day. And so I decided that could be me. I saw a niche, I saw a need, and I took up the opportunity.
Mentioned that you previously spent time as a production assistant for the Pac-12 Network. Was that in San Francisco, or where were you doing that at?
Yeah, that was in San Francisco. So I was commuting every day about 2 hours from where I live to the headquarters, and we were pounding out highlights and writing TV scripts for everybody that came through. Got to meet some cool people, Eddie House, Bill Walton, went through a couple times. And so a lot of great interactions. Yeah.
Is there anything about the Pac-12 Network that maybe isn't well represented, or maybe the perception isn't accurate of it?
Yeah, I think the Pac-12 Network kind of gets a bad rep just because of they're limited to being on Comcast only. But everybody's in there working really hard. Everybody's really great at what they do. I think the Pac-12 Network gets a bad rep simply because of how inaccessible it is. But the amount of experience we had in that room was amazing. Everybody, my boss, David Arnold, was from ESPN. And so he comes over to the Pac-12 Network, kind of really helping lift the the view of it, and everybody had a great time. We were all working extremely hard to do the best we could. Unfortunately, we didn't negotiate the deal as who was televising the games, and so I think that's the only misconception about it, is that it's just some network that nobody cares about. And also, it will be interesting moving forward to see where, like with the streaming stuff, what their role is, because the Pac-12 uses, and this is some insider info, I guess, they use a program called Dalet or Dalet, and I promise you, no one's heard of it because I hadn't heard of it. It's like Adobe Premiere. It's really old though, and so all the Pac-12 footage is on Dalet, and so it'll be interesting to see moving forward what the Pac-12's role kind of is, because all of their footage is in that editing software, and I don't know how transferable that could be.
Interesting. Yeah. So having that experience, are you kind of internally hoping that things kind of work out for the Pac-12? What are your thoughts on just the conference realignment rumors and speculation that's going on? A lot of people claim they know what's going on, but I've talked to people that are pretty high up that just don't know how this is going to play out at this point.
Yeah, I think I'll always have a soft spot for the Pac-12, just because there's two reasons. One, obviously, they were my first job out of college. That's kind of, I'm sure you remember, first job out of college. You're nervous, you're excited. It's like finally someone takes a chance on me, because there's a lot of no's in this industry. And so I graduated during the pandemic. And so everybody that was applying to jobs had a lot more experience than I did, because they were all unfortunately laid off during the pandemic. And so myself with 5 minutes of experience was going up against people with 10 years of experience. So someone finally took a chance on me. I was very grateful, and so I'll appreciate that. And then also, I think the college football purist in me, I grew up with the Pac-10, the Pac-12 in my later years of high school and into college. And so I don't want college football to turn into a 3 mega conference, kind of just everybody's cannibalizing themselves. There's discussions of relegation happening and stuff like that. Like, college football realignment gets way too hectic. I think it'd be cool for the Pac-12 to survive, just because that's what we grew up on. I think what's getting lost in all of these discussions is it's turning conference and like Big 12 into Pac-12 like a rivalry, but it's getting really personal, and like there's a lot of jobs on the line. I think people forget the human element of realignment, how it affects everyone else.
Yeah. Segueing over to Colorado football, have you set forth any expectations for this football team? Or are you kind of sitting back, taking a wait and see approach? Because that's the thing when you cover a team and you talk to folks, they want to dive right to the win-loss record that you're predicting for the next year.
I hate that question, because it's like, I don't know. We've never seen these guys play together. I'm sure some of these guys don't even know everybody's name on the team, if we're being honest. I'm sure they're still out there wearing the little "hello, my name is" name tags. My expectation is, I think just sheer talent alone, they should exceed the 3.5 win total. I think they have a much talented roster. Towards the end of the year, they didn't look competitive last season, but they had competitive moments. TCU was quite competitive until Max Duggan came in. They obviously got the win over Cal. And so I think they have a lot of potential to exceed that 3.5 mark. But Colorado fans haven't really liked my expectations. I'm 5 to 7 wins. I think anything past 7, throw a parade in Boulder. That's very exciting. But everybody in Boulder, I think, and all the new fans that Coach Prime has brought along, they're expecting 12 wins right away, Adam. And you know this. You know they're expecting 12 wins right away. And I'm like, let's pump the brakes. Let's see them play together in the same uniform for once.
Yeah, you say 5 to 7 wins, which is it's only a 3-game difference, but that's a pretty wide margin when you're talking about college football. You know, a lot of teams finish in that 5 to 7 win mark. But it's crazy within that. And I agree with you, because that's kind of where I'm at as well. But you could tell that to 2 people, and one person would call you a hater, and the other person would call you a homer. Isn't that crazy?
I'm usually the hater on my podcast. I'm not trying to be a hater. It's just, you know this. We don't know what to expect. College football itself is a crazy world. That's why we fell in love with the sport. There's games where, for example, Colorado could be playing USC, a team that realistically should be in the playoff if everything goes right for USC. And maybe Caleb Williams just has an off day, one of his few off days, and Colorado beats them. We can't account for the college football aspect of college football. There's a whole different mysterious, magical thing going on in college football where sometimes things just don't go the way they should. And that's why I don't like to make predictions, because it's like, you don't know if maybe the opposing fan base got someone's phone number and they're going to heckle him the whole time. We don't know that. But there's a whole aura around Colorado right now, and I love the confidence. I just don't want them to get their feelings hurt, or I don't want them to get their hopes up and be disappointed. So I like to be right in the middle.
Are there any guys, I guess you'd call them a little bit more under the radar players on this team, that guys that aren't named Shedeur, Travis, Jimmie, or Shane
Yes.
Cokes? I mean, those are kind of the main four established guys, the guys that stood up and talked to this team when they reconvened during Memorial Day weekend. Are there any guys outside of that group that you expect to have a big impact on the field this year for the Buffs?
Yeah, I wrote about this over at Athlon. I think obviously the four guys you mentioned, they're all going to be stars, but we're talking about under the radar guys here. Xavier Weaver. I think all the excitement in Jimmy Horn is warranted. He can kind of do a little bit of everything, but his teammate at USF, Xavier Weaver, was by far statistically the better receiver. I'm not going to dive into who is better, but Xavier Weaver left USF as one of their most accomplished receivers ever. And so I think he offers a great skill set, kind of a jump ball getter, someone that could go deep and come down with. We saw it at Jackson State. Shedeur Sanders likes to push the envelope a little bit. He likes to throw it up sometimes, not all the time, but he likes to throw it up to these guys who go up and get it. Xavier Weaver. I'm looking at, and this is where I get called a hater most of the time, Amarion Cooper at corner. Obviously, we know Travis is going to be one of the corners, and everybody just assumes that Cormani McLean is going to step in right away. But there's a big adjustment stepping into the college game, especially for someone as Cormani. He's a little on the slender side. He's he's got a good build. Like, he's going to be long and lanky, and that's always going to work in his favor. But right now he's small. Whereas Amarion Cooper, very physical. We saw it in the videos that have been released with him and Xavier Weaver. They were physical at the line. And I think that's someone I also like to kind of point to. And then Demoy Kennedy, the Alabama transfer, hasn't really gotten a lot of playing time, but he was athletic enough to get snaps at running back. He's athletic enough to play special teams. And so I think with a more prominent role, we could see something out of him.
I collaborated on your podcast. We're kind of trading off here. You mentioned when I was on your podcast that you have some history with Mustafa Johnson. I wanted to ask you about that on this podcast. Share that for our listeners.
Yeah, me and Mustafa went to high school together. I remember my freshman year, we had, I don't remember what class it was. We had a class together, and Mustafa, obviously, as you know, is very grown. He was always been grown. And so me, I was a young freshman. I think I was 14 my freshman year. I graduated high school at 17. I was like a year younger than my whole grade. And so when I see someone like Mustafa, I was like, oh, this guy must be like a junior or senior. Maybe he's like the teacher or something. And nope, he was same age as me. We played basketball together. As you can imagine, he was a lot stronger than everybody. He was dominant in the paint, but they would always call fouls on him just because he was physically stronger than everybody that would try to guard him. And so I remember my coach would always be yelling, it's not his fault. He's stronger than him. It's not his fault. And so Mustafa, great guy, super nice, down to earth, kind of like a gentle giant, I think. I think when you watch him play, you would assume that he's just like a very like up-tempo kind of guy. He's very relaxed and kind of under the radar energy-wise.
That's awesome. He had to go the JUCO route. He went the hard route to where he got. And it's interesting. Daniel DePrado, who has gone on to coach at some other spots and done well. He was, I think, actually the interim down at USF when they were going through a coaching transition. He was at Colorado and was part of the team that recruited Mustafa to Boulder. And I was playing in this golf tournament with him. And I didn't ask him about Mustafa specifically. I just said, who on this roster is going to surprise people? And this was the summer that Mustafa came into the program. And he said, he goes, you're going to walk up to him, and your first reaction is going to be that Mustafa Johnson is not as tall as they have him listed at.
Yes.
But he goes, look at his arms, look at his hands. That's why we recruited him, and he's going to be a beast. And sure enough, and I think back to the win over Nebraska in 2019, he has a big sack that pushes Nebraska to have a really long field goal, which they missed. And so he had some great moments with the Buffs, and it was kind of a wonky deal where he was going to go pro, didn't get invited to a camp, and then finally got eligible to come back and compete with the Buffs. Would that have been in 2021, I think, right?
Right, yeah.
But that was such a tough deal because he didn't have a full off season. But I think everybody around Boulder has really positive feelings towards Mustafa and what he did for the Buffs.
Yeah, Mustafa was a great guy. And I need to reach out to him now that we're talking about it. I haven't talked to him in a hot minute, but I congratulate him. He's in the CFL now. I congratulate him all the time on his accomplishments, and he's doing well up there. But yeah, I remember the Nebraska game was very a lot of people here in the 209, which is where I live in California, were watching that game because it was Mustafa, and then Nebraska's quarterback Adrian Martinez is also from about an hour away from here. And so it was kind of like the Clovis West versus Turlock game all over again, which was a high school game that was very intense down here. But that was a great game. Mustafa had a lot of big plays, and really, I realistically think if it wasn't for injuries, I think he could have gone fairly high in the draft. I remember, I'm old enough to remember, and you might be too, Adam. There was mock drafts that had him early round considerations at the time. There was some first, second round mock drafts for Mustafa after that year, but injuries kind of slowed him down. But yeah,
and the height issue too, right? I mean,
yes.
If he really was 6'3", I think he would have gotten drafted without question.
Yeah, he always played a lot bigger than his height, which I think is something that we could all agree on. It was just, yeah, I think probably the heights are always generous. You know, that's why the team pages are a little. I think you always subtract 2 and probably subtract about 10 pounds from everybody, and that's probably the more accurate listing.
Yeah. Hey, Kevin, thanks for coming on the podcast. Again, it was great to get a chance to meet you in person and spend some time collaborating on each other's podcasts today. Tell folks how they can find you on social media and also your work covering the Buffs.
Yeah, you can find me on social media at Kevin_Borba. I'm also covering Colorado for Athlon and then the Locked On Podcast Network, where I have a daily podcast. So every day I'm talking about Colorado some way or another. Just make sure to find me. Love your feedback. Adam's coming on the show. I had Brian Howell on a few weeks ago. John Kazano's coming on tomorrow, which controversial, but he knows a lot despite what people want to say. So I got a lot of great guests coming up. So you guys won't want to miss it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Joined on the line by Jimmie Searfoss, contributor to BuffStampede.com. Jimmie, you're going into your senior year at CU. You've been contributing to the website for a couple of years, and you've seen the highs and the lows. You've seen what the spring game press box looked like in 2022, and you got to see what it looked like this past April.
That was kind of my first experience in like a real journalism setting. It was that spring game. I mean, I've covered like basketball games and stuff in the past, but that was kind of my first taste of everything. And man, it feels really different nowadays as opposed to the last one. I remember just being kind of having some arm room to myself in the first spring game and, eating in the press box. But man, there was nothing. You could barely breathe there in this last one. It was a fun time. We got to see everyone that I'm used to seeing, plus 50,000 more people, especially even in the stands. It was a great time. I remember taking pictures and like, all right, well, this is going to be fun. And then seeing Ralphie run for the first time last year, and then this time, oh man, I mean, it was cold too. Like it wasn't even a nice day out, and it was just overflowing with people. It was a great experience that second time around. But yeah, it was like a complete 180 from that very first time.
You showed off your versatility that day. You even went down at one point during the spring game to get some prime nachos. I got to give those a thumbs up. I haven't had a whole lot of concession food at Folsom Field, but I was impressed with that.
I figured they were a ridiculous amount of money. First of all, thank God, we had our meal vouchers, but they were $20 for nachos. And I'm thinking, if you're going to make them prime nachos, at least make them $21. I mean, if you're going to spend $20 on nachos, you're probably going to spend $21. And then that's his number, right? So I figured that was a missed opportunity there by the University of Colorado food department or whatever, whoever runs that. But
I didn't realize that they were that expensive. I would not have enjoyed them as much had I had to pay that.
I'll tell you, I mean, I don't know if I enjoyed them that much after learning how expensive they were. But thank God, we had our in.
I know you're back home briefly in Texas. You're heading back to Boulder tomorrow, but what's the buzz like on CU's campus ever since Coach Prime was hired?
Oh, they're ready, man. They're ready to go. I mean, everyone I don't even know if excited is beyond the word. I think it's at this point like anticipation. They're just ready to get this over with. They want to get to that spring. They want to get to that fall. They want to get to that first game. I would anticipate there's a good amount of people that'll show up for that TCU game. But man, people are excited about Nebraska, man. For like that's gonna be a good time. I wouldn't be surprised if the whole CU website crashes when those tickets go on sale for the season passes for the students. I mean, they expanded the student section this year just for that, because they know what's coming. Those fans are about to show up and show out. They better see. I'm saying Folsom Field better be ready. Folsom Field better be in tip-top shape, because I remember this last year at the TCU game, it was kind of a messy opening. I mean, people showed up early. I think they showed up a little more excited than people were expecting to show up, and they kind of had some issues. I remember they were kicking people out of that student section because it filled up so fast. And I would anticipate it's going to look like that again here soon.
That was one of the few bright spots last season, was the student section. They kept showing up no matter what. And fortunately, Mike Sanford helped inspire the team to at least one win. That was a fun Saturday afternoon at Folsom Field. But aside from that, was brutal. So, there have been times during my tenure covering Colorado where we've had to criticize the students for not showing up, but that hasn't been an issue here recently. I think part of it was the pandemic hit, and folks like you had that pent up social, wanting to be social from the time you were late in high school, early in college, and once the restrictions got lifted, it's almost like people appreciated being out again.
No kidding. I remember my very first football game as a Buff was sitting in my dorm watching a game that was taking place, right down the road, over at Folsom Field. It was against UCLA, that first game. And I remember me and my roommate were just sitting there, and we played the fight song when we scored a touchdown, when Sam Neuer went out and did something cool. But yeah, it was super disappointing. I think we ordered wings from like Fat Shack. I didn't know about Peckish at the time. I would have ordered from Peckish at this point, but ordered just like wings and just did what we could. It was kind of disappointing, but that was just the COVID year. But I definitely think that people showed out, especially, I think at this point they kind of garnished that lovable losers type feel like the Cubbies had for a while over up in Chicago. But I think that attitude's going to kind of, go away at this point in this upcoming season.
Yeah. What do you think expectations are going to be from the average CU student? Are they expecting a national championship in year one, or do they just want to be able to go to Folsom Field and actually have a chance to win the game?
I think they want to have a game to where they can stick around in the third quarter. It's going to be, I think the national media kind of has a mentality that we're expecting something other than maybe 4 wins, 5 wins. I think people have a pretty realistic idea of what this team was. And I think we're all just happy to be here in this situation. And if they win, a lot of games, that's awesome. More than excited. But if they show progress, that would be even better. Like that first Mel Tucker year, I think is what a lot of people are looking at it like, where you just want to see some sort of, trend in the right direction.
So the 11 a.m. kickoff for Nebraska, if it was a different opponent with that time in a different year without Coach Prime, the students aren't showing up until midway through the second quarter, probably, right? But it's going to be different because of Coach Prime, because it is Nebraska. What percentage of the student section will have pulled an all-nighter the night before, you think, for that 11 a.m. kickoff?
I'll say 30%, but I will anticipate way more. Man, I think they see it as a challenge. Like, how early can I get hammered? And I respect it, man. I respect that CU mentality of just going, man. Doesn't matter what time, they will get up. And even if they wake up late, they'll catch up. The altitude helps.
Well, as a 43-year-old, I can tell you, you only get the college experience once. So, hey, you guys enjoy it out there, because suffering through last year and then having all this excitement, do whatever it takes to get ready for that game. Just don't get belligerent. You mentioned the TCU game. There were a couple students that had to be drawn off on stretchers before the game even kicked off. Don't go that far. There's a line, and a couple of those folks definitely crossed it.
Proper CU form.
So share some of your story for folks. I know your parents went to CU, and it's kind of a family decision to be a Buff as well. Talk about your family history. I believe your parents went to CU during the heyday, correct?
Oh yeah, they were here when it was good, and that was kind of always their joke. Is like, I don't know, it must be you. When I was up here, I mean, obviously they weren't great, but heck, I've had parents come here, I've had uncles come here. It's been kind of a fun ride, and I tried to go into my college process with a bit of an open mind, but I had toured CU first, and that was a mistake. You can't tour CU first because you see that campus and it's over. I came over that hill. And yeah, it was pretty much, a shoe in from there. I could have gone to like Missouri or whatever. That's a great journalism school, but I wanted to be in Boulder. I mean, Boulder's fantastic. Everything's great up here except for like prices. Prices
Yeah.
kind of suck big time. But I remember, starting off journalism freshman year. It was like I said, with COVID, it was kind of like couldn't really do much. You could write from your dorm pretty much, and there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for meeting in general. I think at one point CU locked it down to where you couldn't be around more than one person at a time. It was kind of really rough. And then sophomore year, I decided to pick it up a little bit. I started off with one of the CU publications called The Bold. That's a student publication up there, where my editor was Nikki Edwards. That might be a familiar name up here.
Yeah.
Um, and then I kind of moved on. I remember my very first thing I ever covered was the St. Bonaventure NIL, or not NIL, NET game or NIT game, my sophomore year. And I remember being super disappointed about that. Introduced myself to Pat Rooney that day. I don't know if he remembers that, but I thought I was like, I was going to start shaking hands then. And then messaged Adam Munsterteiger on 247 on Twitter. I was like, hey, you got a spot? And he was like, yeah, cool. So I started up
Well,
there.
I invited you out to help cover the spring game, like I mentioned back in 2022, and I was impressed. You asked a question, your first media scrum, and you sent over a clean copy, and I was like, all right, let's go, Jimmie Searfoss, let's go.
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's been again, you send in clean copy, and you're a go-getter. That's one of the things that people ask for advice if they're interested in getting in sports journalism. And the first thing I say is you got to be ready to work. You got to find your niche. It's going to take some time to figure that out. But in nowadays, especially in 2023, you got to wear a lot of different hats. You got to be well versed. You got to do a lot of different things, and that's something you're able to do. So I've really appreciated having your contributions here the last, what is it, about a year and a half now?
Year and a half. It kind of time flies. I was kind of thinking about that earlier. I was like, I sent that DM a long time ago. But it helps, because I mean, I do love CU. I mean, I came home from the hospital very first day one. I had a Ralphie stuffed animal waiting for me, in the crib. And heck, I mean, I got a Cordell Stewart shirt on. I mean, I've been around. I like the history. I'm enjoying all this. I mean, I like to go and see the insides. And I saw like the Heisman Trophy, and I'm like, wow, is that really the Heisman Trophy? And I know that. I know the themes and I know the history, so I appreciate just being a part of it at this point, getting to see some of it and kind of having an inside look at it. That's something I really enjoy personally.
What's it like as a college student to ask Deion Sanders a question in a press conference setting?
Nerve-wracking, man. It is nerve. I get nervous. I'm like,
You caught his attention with one of your questions. I forget what it was.
I remember I was like, oh God, and I was so ready to just be done with that question and over it and everything. And then DNVR put up a little compilation and threw that question answer in there. And I was like, oh God, got a bunch of looks on Twitter. I'm like, here's Dion getting all riled up at me. That was an interesting moment in my career. It had to happen. It's going to happen to everyone at some point. Someone's going to rile up a coach or whatever, but it was kind of nerve-wracking. I was trying to get on his good side afterwards, just with a better question. There's no way he remembered or whatever. He took it.
It wasn't that big of a deal. And
no, it wasn't.
Honestly, the way Coach Prime goes back and forth with the media, I mean, we're all going to be in that position here.
Oh yeah,
in the future.
But I remember that first question. I was nervous. I was shaking. I was just trying to keep my voice straight and keep it from, wobbling all over the place, because I think it was like the second press conference. And it was still packed in there. I had an audience. I got to make sure I, don't stumble over my words or anything. So.
Well, the spring game press conference was surreal for me, having been around this long, to see folks not even be able to find a place to stand in the back. That's how many media members were there. That, I mean, I would venture to guess 60% of those people we had never seen before that covered that game.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, did you have a moment that was like, oh, I'm talking to Deion Sanders?
I try to compartmentalize, but I think at the intro press conference there was so much fanfare. That was that got up my adrenaline up for sure,
Well, the
and
guy next to me was cheering like really loud. I was like, aren't we supposed to be journalists and stay a little more professional? But he was
yeah,
cheering. He was amped up.
the line has been blurred a little bit in terms of journalism. And, yeah, so I'm curious though, Jimmie. You've been around the program. You turned 21, and you were at one of the open practices the next day this spring. So I was really impressed with that. Who stands out to you on this team? Who are you most excited to see out there, aside from, let's scratch off Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter? I think everybody's excited to see those two guys. Who else are you excited to see play for Colorado this fall?
Honestly, Javon Antonio is really caught my eye just because I think that he really brings exactly what that wide receiving core needs. There's a lot of speed guys, but they tend to be on a little bit of the smaller side. He's just kind of a hulking figure out there. Even saw the clips from the practices and things like that where he was just bullying guys out there, and I love to see that. I love seeing a good old dominant wide receiver to go out there and get up and get a ball, especially in that end zone. So I really think that he kind of rounds out that wide receivers room a little bit more than some of the others, and I feel like he needs to get talked about a little bit more.
Give me one prediction that you have for CU football in 2023. I'm going to leave that open-ended. You could go any direction that you'd like.
I'm gonna predict that Colorado upsets a Pac-12 powerhouse. It felt like in previous years, whether that be like Oregon or USC or heck, we play UCLA, right?
Yep.
UCLA, just someone that we are like pretty never would have thought to beat in the past, just because of last year. It felt like no matter what, we were gonna lose. Just talent wise, we were so far below everyone else. Just when it comes to speed, strength, just it felt like we were like never. It felt like we were playing with one arm, and it was the left one. I feel like we're on par with skill wise with some of the other teams at this point, and I would have predicted at least one major upset, like against a Utah or something.
Okay. All right. We'll take that here in mid-June. It's tough to we haven't seen the vast majority of this roster together.
And it's gonna be if they can protect Shedeur. If anything happens to Shedeur, that's gonna be major problems for the Buffs.
Well, about the time this podcast goes live, I'm going to be getting on a plane with my family, our 3 kids, headed down to Cancun for about 5 days of R&R. I've got to recharge, Jimmie. So I'm handing the keys to BuffStampede.com to you. You ready for that?
I'm a driver like you stole it, like I stole it.
Oh, no. Okay. Just don't make me spend a lot of time in the hospitality suite having to work during this, because I just need a couple days, and then from the time I get back home until all the way through the season, I'm going to be ready to go. But man, I got to spend a little beach time before I can feel ready to dive back into everything. Because last season was crazy. You had really starting from a year ago when USC and UCLA left the Pac-12. Then there was Pac-12 Media Day, and everybody was talking about the LA schools leaving the conference. What's next for the conference? Then you had the start of the season where Carl Durrell's on the hot seat. He gets let go. Mike Sanford takes over as interim. We're covering the coaching search while covering a really brutal football season. There's road press conferences where it's just Brian and I in there, and it's really awkward, Jimmie. It's really awkward. And we finally get through that, and exciting, so much excitement with Deion Sanders taking over, but a lot of work in overhauling the entire roster. It's been unlike anything I've ever experienced covering Colorado. It's been great. I definitely, aside from some of the drama last fall, which was tough to cover, it's been a great experience, but it's tiring at the same time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But you're signed on for a little bit more too. You just got your extension. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, BuffStampede.com is staying on 24/7 Sports, so we're excited about that. But yeah, I think 5 days and I'll be fully ready to go and
Oh, yeah.
re-engage and recharge. But it's tough to step away because it's like every day something new is happening with CU football.
No kidding. So I'm gonna keep my ear to the ground here.
All right.
You go waste away.
Where can folks follow you on social media? Well, not only while I'm away, but going forward.
Yeah, I'm over at Jimmie Searfoss, Jimmie. I spell it all weird. Thanks Jimmy Johnson. That's his fault. Jimmie Searfoss on Twitter. That's where you can find most of me blabbering on about whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't got no Instagram. That's for the journalism side of things. That's for me. But yeah, Twitter is where you can find me. Jimmie Searfoss,
awesome.
at Jimmie Searfoss.
Well, hey Jimmy, thanks for taking some time off to join us on the podcast, and good luck taking over for me here these next few days.
I look forward to it.